I got too many things in my hands this morning. Good morning, everybody. Look at this. I got to move the stand. I got to turn on my device. I am just not prepared. I was in the moment in worship. I don't know about you. Good morning. Hey, everybody. Happy Thanksgiving. No? Come on. Oh, it is. It's almost here. I know it's not quite, but hey, it's the Sunday before, and I'm excited. I mean, how can you not love a holiday that's all about eating a feast with a bunch of people you love and like, right? I mean, this is my kind of holiday. I know, you're shocked. One of the reasons I'm not a big fan of Christmas, starting early, in October or August, depending on whether you're at Walmart or not, is because I think we pass over, we cross over Thanksgiving, we ignore it, and I love it too much. I have such good memories associated with Thanksgiving. I remember my mom would spend all day Wednesday cooking so that she could spend all day Thursday cooking. Anybody's mom do that? Yeah, right. Just makes it easier, right? And we always had great food. We had great turkey. It was never dry, and we had mashed potatoes and homemade gravy. We had stuffing so thick that it would stick together. You know what I'm talking about? The kind that you could slice it, and it would be like a slice of bread. Really great stuff. We had deviled eggs. That's my favorite. And we always had that old school Campbell's mushroom soup, green bean casserole, with the French onions on top. Oh, man. We would eat like kings that day, and of course, because she spent 2 days cooking, we would eat like kings for the next several days, weeks after that. That's my brother loves the leftovers, I think, more than he likes the meal itself, And our family friends, the Inbodens, they would come over. They had been friends with us since before I was born. Mom met Sue, and they became friends, and then as we had kids, we were all just sort of integrated our lives together. They would either come over for the feast, or they'd come over shortly thereafter, and we would play games, and we would tell stories and watch football and laugh until the wee hours of the night. And I also remember a time that Kara and I were living in Atlanta, and her sister was living in Orlando. So instead of making the trek all the way back here, we went down to Florida, and it was weird. It was strange, because not only was it warm, I mean, I always, Thanksgiving was at halftime, you go and you throw the football around in the front yard, and you have to bundle up to do that, right? Well, I was down there, and I had to buy shorts. The day after Thanksgiving, I was in the ocean. It was very strange. On top of that, Jason, Amy's husband, he worked at a really nice restaurant, so he promised us really great food. The problem was that Jason is allergic to poultry. So instead of turkey, we had prime rib, and we had asparagus, and we had hummus, and it was weird. It was good. It was really, really good, but it was so different from what I was used to. I had a great time. We always had a great time, and I think Thanksgiving is just one of those holidays for me that it's hard to have a bad time at. Now, maybe that's not your experience. Maybe you have had some rough ones, and I'm sorry if you have, but I'm hoping that this year will be different. I'm hoping that this year you will have great food with great people, and you'll just have a wonderful time, whether you're with a big crowd or just a few people, that this year will be just one of those years that, man, that was so good. I'm so refreshed. I'm so glad we did that. Maybe one of the reasons I like Thanksgiving is because of what it really means. Food and family is wonderful. I'm all for it. But what I love about Thanksgiving more is the story that we all know. The Pilgrims getting together with the Indians, the Native Americans, and having this big meal to celebrate the harvest, and more importantly, to celebrate all the good things that God had done for them. We don't normally think of Thanksgiving as a Christian holiday, but it is. It absolutely is. The whole idea is that we would set aside a very specific time to look back on the year and be very intentionally grateful to God for everything that he's done for us. And I would love if more of us who are followers of Jesus would emphasize more and more this idea that everything, every blessing in our lives, every good thing that we've experienced actually is a gift from God. We gotta raise that call out into the world, that the good things that we experience are because of God. James chapter 1 says, "Don't be deceived, dear brothers. Every good and perfect gift comes down from above, coming down from the Father of heavenly lights, who does not change like shifting shadows." In other words, God is consistently lavishing blessings on us. And we ought to be cultivating a certain amount of awareness of that, just appreciation of that. If you have experienced anything good this year at all, you really ought, I got some hands up in the back, thanks. We really ought to be aware that that's a gift from God. And we ought to take some time in this week to focus in and thank him specifically for the things that we've done. All those things that he's given us to do, all those opportunities that he's laid out in front of us that we've been able to take advantage of, all those blessings of family and friends, and well, I'm not going to start listing because we'll be here all day. You know, I'll confess that I've not always been great at living a life of gratitude. Don't get me wrong, I thank God every day for lots of things. At least once a day, I make sure to thank God for a lot of things that are in my life. But the reality is that very often those can just become moments of thankfulness instead of the lifestyle of gratitude that affects my whole outlook on life. And so today I want to help us to rethink Thanksgiving a little bit. Not the holiday, but our whole experience of gratitude, our whole choice of gratitude that affects our whole outlook. I would love us to train ourselves to live a life of gratitude. So open your Bible to Luke chapter 17. Excuse me. Covering my mic did nothing, did it? I've got a mute button. I don't know why I don't use it. So Luke chapter 17, we're going to start in verse 11, and I want us to look at a story that, you probably know this story, but it really exposes how most of us respond and treat the blessings of God. We're going to start in verse 11. It says this, "Now, on his way to Jerusalem, Jesus traveled along the border between Samaria and Galilee. And as he was going into a village, 10 men who had leprosy met him, and they stood at a distance, and they called out in a loud voice, 'Jesus, Master, have pity on us.' Now the men probably called out in this loud voice because it was customary in the day. The custom of the day was if you had a skin disease like leprosy, to shout out a warning to people to say, 'Unclean.' You let people know, don't come close to us, we're contagious. And it was a warning that people, you should stay away, keep back. But the irony here is they don't want Jesus to stay away, right? They want him to come close. In fact, they're trying to get him close because they are ready to beg to end their suffering. You know, what's fascinating, even more so, is that they recognized him from a distance. I mean, they saw him and they knew it was him. Now, here's my question. How did they know it was him? Now, my guess is Jesus had a reputation. The border of Samaria and Judea, or Samaria and Galilee, actually, and he's watching this. He's been through this area. The people have seen it before, and I'm sure these guys, these 10, had known that Jesus could perform miracles. He had healed some people, and I wonder, maybe they had heard about the leper that he had already healed. So this wasn't unprecedented to ask for help, and maybe they knew that Jesus traveled through that area, and so they set up camp waiting for him to come back through the area. It certainly looks like they're stalking Jesus, which makes sense. Makes a lot of sense. They had this horrible disease that made them outcasts and made them homeless beggars, and they were homeless beggars who couldn't even go into areas where other people were and ask for help. And so their lives were just about as miserable as you could get. And I get that. I would stalk Jesus too. If I had the worst possible circumstances of my life, if my life looked like theirs, I would find a way to find Jesus, just for the opportunity to beg him to fix it, especially if he had already shown that he can, and he would. Look at verse 14. It says, "When he saw them, he said, 'Go show yourselves to the priest.' And as they went, they were cleansed." Now, that's a weird thing for him to say. See, Jesus wasn't dismissing them. "Oh, go show yourself to the priest." See, the law of Moses instructed them, the Jews and the Samaritans who came from the Jews, that if you had a skin disease like leprosy, you couldn't enter into the temple to offer sacrifices. But when it cleared up, then you went to the priest, you presented yourself to the priest, he inspected your body and said, okay, yes, and he would declare you clean, and then you would be allowed back in to the temple so that you could offer those sacrifices and worship publicly again. And so Jesus didn't just heal them. He gave them instructions on how to reconcile and be reconciled to God. That's such a cool moment because they wanted physical healing, but he was much more concerned with their spiritual healing. Isn't that just like Jesus? Then it says that they were healed as they went to show themselves to the priest, and I have to wonder, if they hadn't gone, would they have been healed? If they felt like, oh, he's blowing us off, I'm not going to bother, and they stayed home, would they still have leprosy? But it says that they went. Look at verse 15. It says, one of them, When he saw he had been healed, he came back praising God in a loud voice, and he threw himself at Jesus' feet and thanked him. And he was a Samaritan. And Jesus said, "Were not all 10 cleansed? Where are the other 9? Was no one found to return and give praise to God except this foreigner?" And then he said to him, "Rise and go. Your faith has made you well." Now, I would love to say that I am like the one who came back, but the reality is I'm probably more like the other 9. And don't get me wrong, I don't want you to get the wrong impression about the 9. It's not that they weren't thankful. Absolutely they were. Jesus had completely transformed their whole lives. See, their healing would have completely not just healed their body. Sure, yes, obviously they would no longer have these lesions, but now they were allowed back into society. They could get jobs, and they could get homes, and they could go buy things in the marketplace. And most importantly, they could get back into the temple, and they could offer sacrifices for their sins. They could worship with their brothers. This was a complete and total change. Jesus didn't just heal them. He saved their whole lives. And so certainly they were thankful. But in their elation, they forgot to express that thankfulness. They were probably so excited about the future and what this now meant for what they were going to get to do, that they forgot to ground themselves in gratitude. And it's pretty common. That's still common today, probably more common than we realize. Very often we live with the blessings of God that he's lavished on us constantly, and we forget to live a life of gratitude for those things. We're surrounded every day by countless good things that God has done for us and is doing for us, and we forget to count them. And as a result, we start to notice things instead that are the disappointments in life, the things that aren't the way they're supposed to be. We're surrounded by the blessings of God, but we don't thank God for them. We're not focused on those. We're just focused on the things that aren't right. Anybody else notice more wrong than right with the world? Oh yeah, it's easy. The difficulties and the challenges of life consume our attention, and they overwhelm our heart because we haven't fortified our hearts with gratitude. What I mean is this: gratitude is the antidote for an unhappy life. Has anybody known anybody who was an unhappy person? Oh yeah, somebody who always has something to complain about. They always have some doom to predict or something to bemoan, some injustice. I've known somebody like that. Me. I'm the worst at this. At least for a time I was. I was a very, very unhappy person for huge chunks of my life, for long spans and repeatedly. Not just a person who was going through hardship, because we all go through hardship, but I wasn't just going through hardship. I was completely focused on the hardship. I was a person who could see the dark cloud for every silver lining. You know what I mean? I was a person who didn't just wait for the other shoe to drop. I sort of expected it to be hurled at my head. I was looking for the bad, and I was seeing it because it was everywhere. And I know now that there's always going to be disappointments in life. There's always going to be hard things. In fact, there's even going to be tragedies in life. That's unavoidable. That's just life outside the garden, right? But I also know that if you fortify your heart so that those tragedies don't become your worldview, it changes your whole perspective. And the only way you fortify your heart is by being grateful, being able to give thanks for the good that you do have, instead of focusing and fixating on the things that you don't. See, there's real power in gratitude. The simple act of giving thanks reorients your perspective, and it restores your emotions, and neuroscience tells us that it actually rewires your brain. So there's this article, The Neuroscience of Gratitude and Its Effects on the Brain. And it says this: from a neuroscientific perspective, gratitude activates key regions of the brain, such as the prefrontal cortex, the anterior cingulate cortex, the ventral stratum, and the insula. Okay, that's weird, but all those things are the areas, those are the pieces of the brain that regulate emotions, that affect decision making, that light up when you have rewards, and they let you know, hey, something good has happened to you. In other words, when we make gratitude our default setting, it has a physical effect on you. And more than that, it has a significant impact on your life. Look at this stuff. This is amazing. For one, gratitude makes you feel good. Literally, it makes you feel good. So not just being grateful is a good feeling, but there's something that happens when you express gratitude, when you're aware of it, when you're thinking about the good things and you give God thanks, that it changes the way you feel. According to the researchers, expressing gratitude actually creates feelings of happiness and contentment. It creates it out of nowhere. That's kind of cool. It activates the limbic system to produce more serotonin and dopamine. In other words, when we say thank you and mean it, we actually feel better. Gratitude also makes us physically healthier. This is neat. Studies show that expressing gratitude reduces your levels of cortisol. That's the stress hormone. And it actually can improve your cardiac function. That's pretty neat. It can boost your immune system. It can lower your blood pressure. It even blunts pain receptors. Being a more grateful person means that backache stops aching. Isn't that cool? Gratitude has this way of, it can make you sleep better, and when you wake up in the morning, you wake up more energized. Gratitude physically changes your experience of life. Gratitude also makes you more resilient. Gratitude affects the sympathetic nervous system so that it controls your response to anxiety. So when things are stressful in your life, if you are living a life of gratitude, your stress reduces. You don't recognize the stress as much, or you don't respond in the same way to stress. I was telling Julie earlier that I used to get so stressed that I get all that tension in my shoulders and move up to my neck, and then I get headaches. Anybody else experience like that? Those were in the times when I wasn't being as grateful as I should be. Of course it was. I didn't have anything that was fortifying my heart against that influence on my life. By building habits of being thankful and expressing thankfulness, our brains get better at seeing more things to be grateful for. Gratitude makes you resilient. See, you start to see more good things when you look for good things. When you're grateful for the good things you do see, you start to see more things to be grateful for. And that's the best part. That's the best part, because when you start to see more good things, you're seeing the goodness of God on display. You are actually glorifying God by seeing how good he is. And if that weren't enough, gratitude helps you make friends and deepen relationships. Not just when you're thankful with someone who's done something good to you, but in general. I mean, a thankful person is much more of a joy to be around, right? People are drawn to people who live and exude gratitude. They're drawn to someone who sees more good than bad. Gratitude makes you a happier person. Not happy in your emotions, but happier in your outlook. We need to live a life of gratitude, because by living a life of gratitude, we become more connected to God, and we become more connected to others. And that's kind of the point, isn't it? To love God and love others. I'm pretty sure I heard that somewhere. So how do you do that? Well, you start by looking for something simple. You look for something small. I've told you before that I often say thank you. I often give God thanks for my pillow. And I know that might sound weird, but an uncomfortable pillow, a hard pillow, really makes rest difficult, doesn't it? But a soft pillow, man, when I lay my head down, the first thing I think of is, oh, that's nice. The second thing, I've sort of trained my brain, wired my brain to say, thank you, God, that I have a soft pillow. And as soon as you do that, then I find myself thanking God also for the bed and the covers, and then becomes, well, God, thank you for this warm and clean and safe home that I live in, this house where I don't have to worry about someone breaking in. I don't have to worry about the water coming in through the roof. Thank you that I'm warm and dry. And then, of course, I think about the food that's in my kitchen, that I actually have food in my pantry, and I obviously don't have to worry about food tomorrow. I don't have, the prayer, the model prayer Jesus gave us, give us this day our daily bread. It always seems like a weird prayer to me, because I've got way more than I need, and God has just lavished that blessing. Of course, that gets me thinking about all the other things I have. And before you know it, I'm thanking God for the fact that I get to live here, and I get to serve at Promise Point, and I have your friendships. You guys, I love you guys. Oh my gosh, I love you guys. And I think about you individually, and I thank God for you, and then I thank God for the fact that we have this kingdom to be a part of. And then, of course, as this has gone on, I start to thank God that he has redeemed me through Jesus Christ, because he has taken away all of my sin, all of the things, the horrible in my life. He has poured his life out so that that will completely be covered. And now I have the promise of eternity with him, but also today with him. And so thanking God for my pillow turns into the worship of God. I know it sounds nuts, but it works. And so I do it. So here's my point. Start small. Start with something simple and build out from there. When you wake up in a funk because you got something to do that day you're not looking forward to, it's going to be hard. Or if you just have too many things on your plate. Is that anybody else's life? And you just, oh gosh, I got so much to do today. When you wake up in that kind of, take a moment and find one thing to be thankful for. And then chase that. What's another and another and another? And honestly, within minutes, you'll be springing out of bed excited to face the day. Because you know you're going through that day with God, and he is going to bless you. He may not make all of your problems go away. In fact, I'm betting he won't. But you can face those problems differently. You can face those challenges differently because your whole outlook has shifted. And best of all, you'll feel closer to God. You will feel his presence. You will be in his presence. You will experience the presence of God because he is a good Father who pours out blessings on you. And if you do this day after day, in the mornings, in the evenings, in the middle of the day, whenever it comes up, whenever you find something to be thankful for, if you'll do this over and over and over again, you know what you've built? You've built a whole life of gratitude. It's amazing. So this week, enjoy Thanksgiving. Enjoy the great food. Enjoy the time with the company. Watch some football or don't, whatever you're into. Enjoy the time, and I hope you do. I hope it's wonderful. But I also want to encourage you to take time to intentionally sit down and count your blessings. Maybe you need to write them down. I can't write fast enough when I get going. There's too many good things to thank God for. Count your blessings this week. Go into Thanksgiving with a sense of how good he has been to you and all the promises of goodness to come. Fortify your heart against the disappointments and the tragedy in life. Regain some perspective and glorify God for the good Father that he is. Let's pray. God, thank you again. Thank you and thank you and thank you. I want to start listing all the good things. I want to start saying all the different ways that you've blessed my life, but we would be here for hours. You are so kind to us. Thank you for the song that says that. You have been so, so good to me. When I felt like I was your enemy, when in fact the word says I was your enemy, your love pursued me. When I felt worthless, you cherished me. You are so, so good to us. So God, for those of us who have difficulty seeing that, would you open our eyes to see the goodness all around us? And if we can, God, if you can help us, prompt us to go tell other people the good that they see for them, the good in their life. Help them reorient their thinking. Not by lecturing them or preaching at them, just by offering that I'm celebrating with you the goodness in your life. God, this week, as we enjoy all the things that go with the holiday, make it a watershed moment in our lives that on Friday we're just as thankful, and then on Saturday we're even more thankful, and then on Sunday we're even more thankful, and we go running into Christmas, not stressed out by all of the things that there are to do, but instead thankful that we get to do all those things and celebrate your coming to live with us and be Emmanuel. You are so, so good to us. You're awesome. We love you. Amen.